story by Mythic Tales of Africa. The mirror moved, I swear. That's the first thing I remember clearly. Even now, lying here in this dreary motel room, thousands of miles from where it started, I can feel it, like it's watching me. Not the way a person stares, but something far worse. The air feels heavy, thick, like the walls themselves are conspiring against me. I'm not crazy. At least, I don't think so. This all began 6 months ago when I was in Ghana for work. I'm an archaeologist, but not the kind you see in the movies. No ancient tomb raiding or narrow escapes. My job is just cataloging artifacts and writing reports. Fascinating in its own way, but still a lot of dust and tedium. The project was to investigate a site near a small village. A burial ground had been uncovered, yielding the usual stuff: clay pots, tools, faded carvings. We set up camp just outside the village, close to the excavation site. It was business as usual until Kojo arrived. I still remember that day vividly. Kojo was one of the local farmers, an older man with a stooped back and hands calloused from years of hard work. He walked into camp carrying something wrapped in cloth. His expression was grim, his movements hesitant. He seemed afraid. He unwrapped it slowly, as though even touching it made him uneasy. The object was a mirror, though not like any mirror I'd ever seen. It was about the size of a dinner plate, framed by dark, aged wood carved with intricate, swirling patterns. The carvings didn't resemble any symbols I'd studied before, no language, no recognizable designs. The glass was darker than normal, almost black. At first glance, it looked opaque, but when you tilted it just right, you could make out your reflection, blurred and distorted, like staring at yourself through murky water. "I found it buried near my farm," Kojo said quietly. His voice trembled, and he avoided looking directly at the mirror. "It shouldn't be here." We asked him what he meant, and he hesitated before answering. "This mirror sees what it shouldn't. My grandfather used to tell stories about such things, things from before, dangerous things." Kojo's hand shook as he handed it over. "Don't keep it," he warned. "Don't let it stay." We didn't take him seriously. Who would? A cursed mirror sounded like a bedtime story. We chuckled politely, thanked him for bringing it to us, and assured him we'd study it carefully. He didn't laugh. He simply turned and walked away, muttering under his breath. Looking back, I wish I had listened to him, but at the time it was just another artifact, a curiosity to photograph, examine, and file away. The first week, nothing strange happened. The mirror sat on a table in our tent, gathering dust while we focused on the more valuable finds. But Kojo's warning stayed with me, and soon I'd realize it wasn't just superstition. The first strange thing was subtle, barely noticeable really. The mirror seemed to move, just an inch to the left or right, nothing dramatic. At first I thought one of the team had bumped the table or moved it while cleaning, but no one admitted to touching it. Then there were the sounds. At night, after the camp had gone quiet, I'd hear faint whispers, too soft to make out any words, but persistent. They always seemed to come from the direction of the mirror. I brushed it off as wind or animals outside the tent. It was easier to dismiss it than to think too hard about it. A few days later, I noticed something odd about my reflection. When I leaned in close, tilting the mirror to catch the light, my face stared back, but it wasn't quite right. My features were blurred, stretched slightly, like a face reflected on rippling water. My eyes were wrong too. They looked darker, deeper, almost hollow. I chalked it up to bad lighting and fatigue. After all, we'd been working long hours, digging under the relentless sun. Exhaustion can play tricks on your mind, right? But the whispers grew louder. I tried to ignore them, putting in earplugs to block out the noise. It didn't help. The sound wasn't outside my ears. It was in my head. At night, I'd wake up drenched in sweat, heart racing, convinced I'd heard my name being called, always in the same low, rasping voice. My teammates noticed I wasn't sleeping well. "You're overthinking it," they said. It's just an old mirror. Don't let Kojo's ghost stories get to you. I wanted to believe them. I really did. Then came the video. One night, I set up my phone to record the mirror while I slept. I wanted proof, something to show my team that I wasn't imagining things. The next morning, I eagerly reviewed the footage. For the first few hours, nothing happened. The mirror just sat there, dark and silent. But then, around 3 a.m., something changed. My reflection moved. It was subtle at first. A slight twitch of the head, a shift of the eyes, but the movements didn't match mine. In the recording, I was lying still in my sleeping bag, but my reflection was moving, watching. And when it smiled, my blood ran cold. I rewound the footage, heart pounding. There was no mistaking it. My reflection was alive. By the time I showed the footage to the rest of the team, it was gone. The file was still there on my phone, but all I could see was static. No sound, no movement, just static. My teammates smirked when I told them what I'd seen. "You're really letting this thing get to you," one of them, James, said. He was the lead archaeologist, the guy in charge. I could tell he thought I was losing it. "It's just a mirror. Kojo spooked you with his superstitions, and now you're scaring yourself." I wanted to believe him. Maybe I was just tired. Maybe the mirror was just an old piece of junk, and my mind was playing tricks on me. But that didn't explain the whispers, or the way my reflection stared at me when I wasn't looking. That night, I moved my sleeping bag to a different tent, far away from the mirror. I felt silly, like a kid scared of the dark. But as I lay there, listening to the quiet rustle of the wind, I started to relax. Maybe James was right. Maybe I was just overthinking it. Then I heard it. It was faint at first, just a low, rhythmic tapping. Tap, tap, tap. It sounded like someone was knocking on glass. My heart started racing. I tried to tell myself it was just the wind, but it wasn't. The sound was coming from the mirror's tent. I wanted to ignore it, to pretend I didn't hear anything, but something pulled me toward it. My legs felt like they were moving on their own as I crept closer to the tent. The tapping stopped the moment I stepped inside. The mirror was there, propped up on a table, its dark surface reflecting the faint glow of my flashlight. I stared at it, waiting for something to happen, and then, slowly, my reflection smiled. Not me, I wasn't smiling. I was frozen in place, my breath caught in my throat. But the face in the mirror grinned, a wide, unnatural grin that didn't belong to me, and its eyes, they weren't mine. They were dark, deeper, like they were looking straight through me. I stumbled back, tripping over a chair and falling to the ground. My flashlight rolled away, casting erratic beams of light around the tent. When I looked up, the mirror was dark again. My reflection was gone. The rest of the team came running when they heard the commotion. I tried to explain what I'd seen, but they just looked at me like I was crazy. James shook his head and muttered something about stress. "Get some sleep," he said. "You're scaring everyone else." By the fourth week, I wasn't the only one noticing strange things. Equipment started breaking down for no reason. A generator which relied on for years shorted out and caught fire. Our food supplies spoiled overnight, even though they were kept in sealed containers. Then there was Samuel. Samuel was one of the local guides, a cheerful guy who always had a story to tell. One night, he disappeared. We searched the camp, the woods, even the nearby village, but he was nowhere to be found. 3 days later, he stumbled back into camp, barefoot and covered in scratches. His eyes were wide with terror, and he kept muttering the same phrase over and over. "It's in the shadows. It's always watching." He refused to say more, and the next morning he was gone again. No one saw him leave. I knew it was the mirror. It was affecting all of us, breaking us down piece by piece. I couldn't take it anymore. That night, I stole the mirror from the tent. I wrapped it in a blanket and carried it deep into the woods. My hands were shaking as I dug a hole, tossing dirt aside in frantic, clumsy scoops. I buried the mirror as deep as I could. When the hole was filled, I piled rocks on top, just to be sure. For the first time in weeks, I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe I'd gotten rid of it. Maybe it was over. But when I returned to camp, the mirror was waiting for me. It was sitting on my bed, its dark surface gleaming faintly in the moonlight. My blood turned to ice. The others tried to laugh it off, calling it a prank. But I knew better. I knew the mirror wanted me to know I couldn't escape it. After that, everything fell apart. I stopped sleeping altogether. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw faces in the dark, long, twisted faces with hollow eyes that glimmered like reflections in water. They whispered to me, voices low and urgent, but I couldn't understand their words. I tried to destroy the mirror. I smashed it with a hammer, but the glass didn't even crack. I set it on fire, but the flames wouldn't touch it. I threw it into the river, weighted down with stones. But it reappeared in my tent the next morning, dry and untouched. The team decided to shut down the project. Too many things had gone wrong. People were hurt, scared, and ready to leave. We packed up and left the village, but I knew it wasn't over. I flew back home, hoping distance would free me from the mirror's grip. For a while, I thought it had worked. I didn't see it for weeks, and I started to convince myself it was all in my head. Then I woke up one night and found it sitting on my kitchen counter. I don't know how it got there. I don't know why it chose me. All I know is that I can't escape it. Now, I'm here in this motel room, miles away from home, trying to run again. But it's no use. The mirror is here with me. I can feel it watching, waiting. The whispers are louder now, clearer. They're saying my name. If you're reading this, please listen to me. If anyone ever offers you a strange mirror, don't take it. Don't look into it. Don't let it near you. Burn it. Smash it. Do whatever you can to destroy it. But don't look. This is the end, and please tell me how you feel about this story. Hope you enjoyed it, and don't forget to please share, like, and subscribe for my content like this.